it was an instantaneous love and an instantaneous passion. And, I'm in preschool, kindergarten, first grade, all the way through senior high school. What do you want to be when you grow up? And it was a professional wrestler, and it never changed.
Women's
Never.
Wrestling Talk, the number one women's wrestling network on the planet.
Bonjour, you're watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the number one women's wrestling show on the planet. My name is TK Trinidad, and today we have an amazing show, and of course, nothing but amazing guests. She is the bad chick and forever vicious, former ISPW Wrestling Women's Champion, hailing from New Jersey. Please welcome Vicious Vickie. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. What a great introduction. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good. So I have to definitely shout out Mr. Dave LaGreca for shouting you out, because I was like, I was actually talking about this on TikTok Live earlier. It's so great to see so many women's wrestlers doing so many amazing things, but for somebody like me who's trying to like highlight all the women's wrestlers, it's hard to keep track. So I'm so glad he highlighted you, because I've heard your name before and I'm like, dang, I don't think I reached out there. Let me reach out. So shout out to Dave for that. And thank you for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Dave is the man. I owe a lot to him. He is a very dear, good friend. He is just someone who's always been in my corner since I met him, since day one. And I would like to think that that was a pretty good endorsement for me. So super grateful that he was able to put that out there, for sure.
Yes. Very true. And I mean, the timing was also perfect because the PWI 250 came out. I'm so glad, another behind the scenes thing. So we had an interview, I think, scheduled 2 days ago, but there were people on my roof and my dog was going crazy. And I'm so glad that happened, because the PWI came out like a day later. So universe. So congratulations, 228 on the PWI list. So what does that mean to you? Like, it's being a couple years in a row. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's, growing up, I used to have and collect all these magazines, right? Even like the Wow magazines, like just constantly had all these magazines, going through them and watching my favorites growing up in these magazines, and when I first started wrestling, to some people it's just a list, and it might be, that's very true. But to be able to be a part of something that you used to fangirl over, essentially, is pretty freaking cool. My first year I was 185. Last year I think I was 237. And now this year, and it's an honor, it is, to be recognized as in the world, this number out of X amount of talented women in the world. I mean, 10 years ago, even, women's wrestling was not what it is right now. We all know that.
Yep.
So it really is cool to still be a part of that. And it's funny because I felt like this year was one of the best years of my entire career. I wrestled some of the best in the business, in the world, even. So sometimes the numbers are deceiving, but I think that's only because there's so many women out there. There's so many talented women. So instead of like getting mad about the number, I'm just happy to be on the list.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I think there might have been talk maybe 2 or 3 years ago of it like expanding to 500, and I don't even know if that's enough when you think about it, because just internationally, it's like every time I see the list, and I'm happy for this. Every time I see the list, it's like, oh, there's names that I've never even like heard of, and it's just like, it's great, but it's also like, okay, I need to, do this research type stuff. So, I mean, congratulations again. But this journey for you, as far as wrestling wise, has been a long one. Like, you've been wanting to wrestle since you were 4 years old. I equate it to, like, when you're like a kid and you ask a kid, like, they want to be a fireman or whatever. Like, what was the thing that you're like, I want to be a wrestler, period?
Yes. So it's so funny you say that, because I always, like, when I tell my story, I always say, growing up, like, I didn't want to be a dentist or a vet or a singer. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. When I was like 3 or 4, my sisters were watching it. It was like the Attitude Era. And year-old girls were not watching. So it was an instantaneous love and an instantaneous passion. And, I'm in preschool, kindergarten, first grade, all the way through senior high school. What do you want to be when you grow up? And it was a professional wrestler, and it never changed. Never. I may have had different interests. I was always an athlete. When I wanted to go to school, I went for like medical assisting. Like I did all these different things, just trying to find like a plan B essentially.
Right.
But when you're 4 years old and you already know what you want to be, and then you're 32 and like, hey, I still want to do this. To me, those are the people that deserve those opportunities because the passion is just so undeniably loud, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
When you have something like this that is your lifelong dream and you're doing it, I mean, at what point do I go, wow, like I made it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think this is I don't think I've ever told this story. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be like a music, producer, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
However, growing up in Canada, like we didn't like family didn't know any of that. So it was like I want to do this, but I didn't know how to get to that. And so that dream or that, and also
Uh-huh.
too, I probably didn't want it bad enough because I wasn't searching for it. But at that age, at 4 years old, especially how women's wrestling has changed and evolved and how wrestling schools have changed and evolved. Like I feel like there's way more wrestling schools now as far as opportunities. How did you go about this is what I want to do? And then how did you like what did your parents say? And then how did you go about making it happen?
Yeah, great question. It's a huge part of my story for sure. High school, I told my parents like, hey, this is when FCW was a thing. For anyone who's not familiar with FCW, it was basically the NXT before it was NXT. It was a training
Mhm.
ground for WWE where you could go and actually pay to train there. So essentially imagine paying to go train at NXT. That's what
Right.
was a thing back then. We're talking the Bailey and the Paige and the Becky, Charlotte, that class, that era. So my parents, I wanted to go there. I said, "Hey, look, I don't want to go to college. I graduated in 2011. I don't want to go to college. I want to use whatever money you have set aside or what have you to go move to Florida and I want to go to this wrestling school. That is what I want to do in my life." My
Uh-huh.
parents were not ever against it,
Mhm.
but they were just very old school, realistic, and they didn't want me to get hurt and they didn't want me to not have like a plan B. So for
Mhm.
them, they couldn't sign off on it. So I kind of got really depressed, and I'm not blaming my parents. My parents are fantastic people. But I kind of went off the deep end a little. The one thing in my life that I wanted, I felt
Mhm.
like I couldn't attain. I felt like it was out of reach now. All these guys that I watched on the indies and these youth clinics and these inns essentially that I had kind of vanished when I wasn't able to go do what I wanted to do. Um,
Right.
and I kind of had a little bit of a drug addiction. I kind of spiraled and went down this really dark path that I don't belong in.
Mhm.
I don't want to say I don't want to say I was a goody two shoe, but I was just like a good kid, and I
Right.
just got sucked into this lifestyle for a very, very short amount of time. I'm coming up on 10 years sober, December 10th.
Nice.
Um, so long road, but I got lost. I got
Mhm.
lost. I felt like, what do I do with my life now? If I can't do the one thing that I wanted to do, since I could pretty much walk,
Right.
what am I going to do? I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to be this or that. Um, so once I got out of the hole, right, December 10th, 2015, I got myself cleaned up. I really, really worked hard to maintain that sobriety because I didn't want to live that life.
Mhm.
Um, I would say about 2 years into sobriety, I said, hey, you know what? I was young, right? I was like 22, 23. I'm like, I'm young. I don't want to live the rest of my life regretting not trying. Like I have to
Right.
try. I'm an adult now. I can pay my own way. I can drive my own way. Like, let me do this. Sat my family down, let them know, hey, look, I'm going to wrestling school. Super behind me. There was a school out in New Jersey where I live, Creative Pro New Jersey. I got trained by Danny Moff, who was like an indie legend. I got trained by Pat Buck, Mario Baccara, and I had a
Nice.
great, great like upbringing, so to speak.
Mhm.
But to get there, it took so much. I mean, I could go on and on about my story and like how it got me there, but I remember my first day of training when I had a couple of the guys that I knew when I was a kid there. And I just like looked around the ring and I was like, I made it.
Mhm.
Like a couple of years ago, I almost died, and now I'm like so glad that I got a second chance at life to really live my dream. And
Yeah.
it's crazy because it's very like now that I'm in it, I look back and I'm like, I'm glad that I took that step. I'm glad that I bet on myself.
Right. At that moment, as far as I guess like the rock bottom moment, like I love biographies and stuff like that. And some people it's like, they look at themselves in the mirror or they see something else happening that they're like, I don't want to be there. What was your
Yeah.
moment where it's just like, what am I doing? This is this is not the family, like nothing about my upbringing says that I should be at this point. So what was that moment that like immediately kind of almost woke you up?
Yeah. My dad, he told me I want nothing to do with you anymore. And that was
Mm,
icing on the cake. My mom has suffered so much and, my sisters, but like it was just for some reason it was my dad telling me I want nothing to do with you. And I was like, well, that's not a thing. I'm like such a mommy and daddy's girl. I'm like, no shot, but
right.
it was just having that moment of, hey, you're not welcome in my home. You're not, I don't trust you. All these different things because of something. It's not stupid because I know there's people out there who are struggling. Like, please trust me, like reach out and get help. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I have a problem.
Hmm.
It took me to say, hey, I have a problem. I need help. Once I kind of took the wool off over my eyes, I realized, you know, there's so much more to life. And once you get sucked into that, you don't care about your family. You don't care about your
Hmm.
friends. You don't care about your own life. And it takes, like you said, it always takes that one thing, to wake you up and just be like, this is not my life. This is not the life that I am led to live.
I mean, yeah, I think we all have like those type of stories where it kind of
Yeah,
changed. Well, hopefully we do. It changes the trajectory, or somebody's
for sure.
listening to your story, and that's the wake up moment. So thank you for sharing that.
100%. Yeah, I'm always, because I know how scary it is to kind of be stuck in your own head and feel like you don't have a way out. So
Hmm.
always like sharing that story.
And so now we get to you're 22, you're in the ring, and you're like, I've made it. Like, kind of talking to your younger self, and throughout your wrestling career, what would you today tell your younger self as far as wrestling?
I wish that I could go back and just hug her right now because it's, I almost feel like if I didn't do this, I would be doing a disservice to her. You
Hmm.
know, watching little girls and boys and just fans in general, how they react to me and how, whether they cosplay as me or whether they are so excited to see me or meet me or cheer for me or what have you. I was that fan. I was that essential little girl, and what I put her through to get here is awful. And I wish I could just go back in time and do it all over again. But I feel like I am one of those people that feels like everything happens for a reason.
Hmm.
And, back in 2020 when the world kind of shut down, I think we all kind of lived this where you got really down and you're just kind of like questioning everything in your life. And, I
Hmm.
had one of those moments at that point. And that was one of the things that I thought about was like, look at where I've come and look at where little you would be so ecstatic that you get to even share a locker room with the Hardy Boys, like
Hmm.
little things like that I don't take for granted. And I don't ever think I'm too good enough. I don't, in the sense of, I respect everyone around me in the business because of just how much I love it. And I
Right.
think that living this dream, the biggest thing, I'll put this out there. I'm getting a little emotional. The biggest
Mm.
thing that scares me
Mhm.
is not making it, because I'll forever feel like I let her down, and I don't want to
Mm.
live through that pain. And I've lived through some pain. I've dealt with some stuff, but like it's been keeping me up at night because I'm getting older and the clock keeps ticking, and like that fear is real now, and I
Mhm.
think it's because I'm getting older that I'm starting to get emotional regardless.
Mhm.
But it's scary, and I know that I did right by younger me. I'm living the dream. I've done some cool stuff, but not making it is really fearful.
And actually, ironically, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who's retired, and I equate it to the entertainment industry, right? You
Hmm.
have
Yeah,
people
for sure.
who, like the area that I live in, you have so many people that are on commercials, and they've been in the industry for 10, 20 years, right? And it's just kind of like, at what is your definition of making it? And
Right.
then, you know, I guess the second part of it is, do you oftentimes look at like, I've already made it, like the end goal? I know some people, their end goal is WWE, but I think it was either like LFG or some interview I was watching where it's just like the percentage of the amount of wrestlers and the percentage of people who sign to WWE and are there for 10 plus years is almost smaller than the NFL and NBA.
Yeah.
So as far as like looking at all of that, actually I think it might have been I might have been your interview. But actually I'm looking at all that, like what's your definition of making it, and then like what how are you going to get there?
Yeah, for me, making it is just making it to a main stage. I feel like, and it's funny you say, because there's different definitions of making it, right?
Mhm.
So the other day, um, I was in like a dressing room, but it was, we're on an indie show, so it was a bathroom as well. And
Sounds all right.
some young fan walked in and went bananas because I was about to change. Bananas, like hugged me. I love you, Vicky. And I was just like, she left, and I'm emotional, if you haven't noticed. I started tearing up as soon as she left, and
Mhm.
I was like, well, if I don't make it, that was making it, and I genuinely felt that in that moment. I was like, I just made
Right.
this girl's life, and it made me feel so good about myself because like it made her happy, and she loves
Right.
me, and I'm like, I love you too. I literally told her, I was like, I love you too. um so I can say, just because of the kind of person that I am, those things are very important and they mean so much to me.
Mhm.
But then there's that selfish wrestler in me. We are, and not selfish in a detrimental way. I feel, and this might come off conceited, I assure you I am not. I am not at all. My head is this big. um but I feel in my heart that I have something really, really special.
Mhm.
And it's frustrating when you are in a pool of uberly talented people. It's not like I'm not. I
Mhm.
don't think I'm the best wrestler in the world. I never claimed to be, but I just feel like if someone just took that chance on me, they wouldn't regret it. And to
Mhm.
sit with that every day, like you just know what you can offer and what you can bring to the table on
Right.
so many different levels. And honestly, the Greca, I love him to death. I appreciate him for saying that. But that's how
Mhm.
I feel too about myself. He's like, it's
Right.
just, if someone just, you know what, let's do it. They'll be like, oh, well, whoops. Well, we should have did this sooner, and
Right.
I would bet any amount of money on that. And that's just because I have so much faith in myself and so
Right.
much passion. And that is one of the biggest things that I've seen, wrestlers today failing, is the passion. If you don't have the passion for it, you're not gonna excel. You're not gonna surpass yourself.
Right.
And I know a lot of people come in, whether they're athletes, that's great. I was an athlete. Like athletes are good. They're coachable. Actresses, whatever, models, what have you. The list goes on. But for me, the people that are those like lifers, and they have that like undeniable, like, just fire inside of them to be the best and to live a dream. To me, those are the people you want because they take it seriously and they love it so much. Like, to me, it's
Mhm.
like, I'll take a $30,000 contract. Like, it's like, I just want to make it. And that is to answer
Right.
your question in a long way. I would be willing to take that crap contract
Mhm.
because I know that if I show, hey, I can do this, I'm going to, work X amount of hours, work X amount of shows, and just keep showing them why I should be at the top, and
Right.
I like that. I like proving myself. And I've been doing that for 7 years, so.
What do you think is the prototype, like, if you were to, give somebody advice if they wanted to, become a wrestler? What are the core things that they need in order to succeed? Because I know what you're saying, but what you've done, and when what I've looked into, like, what you've done, it's far surpassing a lot of folks as far as what I think is a prototype as far as wrestlers to get to a certain level. So what are your points?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. For me, I feel like obviously having years in, at least 5 or more to me.
Mhm.
I always felt like age was an issue, but I'm starting to see that it's not anymore, which is a great thing because that was very
Mhm.
scary for a while. So I would say amount of years, how many shows have you worked? Don't say you worked 7 years and you've only worked 20 shows, that kind of
Mm.
thing.
Mhm.
Credible opponents, definitely, where I'm from. And then a lot of the girls in the indies, we kind of get stuck in a holding pattern where we're wrestling the same people in our territory, so to speak.
Mhm.
And we don't excel because we're just never getting in the ring with people who are better than us. And
Right.
that's not to say that I'm bad or she's bad or what have you. It's just how it is. You have to wrestle people who are better than you to get better. So
Mhm.
I would say that. And also, having some credibility with some TV companies, being able to say, hey, I had a tryout, or I did this, or I did that, or dark matches, what have you. So I think to me, those are important. But a lot of the times, that's just not the case anymore. And that's okay. I think wrestling is evolving so drastically that even for someone like me who's only 7 years in, I'm trying to keep up with the changes, and
Right.
I think a lot of us are. And I will say, even though I feel that should be the prototype, I do find myself questioning a lot. And I mean this totally respectfully, but I find myself questioning a lot, like, what are they looking for? When
Mhm.
you feel, for me, right? Speaking on behalf of myself, I feel like I check off every single box. And I don't understand, almost like, what's the problem?
Right.
And then you kind of look and see what they're picking, and it's like, okay, but we have 10 of those and 15 of those and none of them, so
Right.
I forgot who told me this, but it was someone of very high credibility. Said, I remember it was, he said, I was like, what exactly are you looking for? Like, I just want someone not to BS me because I want to get better. I am coachable. I want to know, what do you want, so I can do it and show you I can be it. And I remember they just said, like, we don't even know. And I'm like, oh, okay. Which I kind of get, because sometimes, if you're in WWE or TNA or AEW, whatever, and you see someone, you're just like, oh, we want her. We want him.
Right.
That's just kind of how it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating, and it's frustrating for a lot of us, and even for the people who get let go from these major companies. It's frustrating, but we
Yeah.
do it because we love it, right?
Yeah, it's very, when I look at different professions, even, entertainment on a whole, wrestling is very much it's it's almost totally different than from, like, acting. Because
Yes.
wrestling, it's like you get to do make believe, but you get to
Yeah.
reinvent yourself. You could literally be and I've seen it. You can literally be, people will start crying when they see you. Like you didn't realize how much of an impact you've made on somebody else's life. Like and you can
Sure.
do this for as long or as short as you want. So it is very, very interesting, the wrestling world. But then
Oh God,
sometimes
is
as
it?
an outsider, like, because I've been working around it, I've never been in the ring, nor am I gonna go in the ring, but just kind of looking around, I'm like, sometimes y'all crazy. Like,
Oh
oh
God,
my
yeah.
gosh.
We're the
Um,
craziest people on earth. It's it doesn't make any sense.
yeah, it doesn't, but it does. Like, and talking about the
Yeah.
territories too, like I find sometimes I, stumble or discover territories. Like, I
Mhm.
started
Mhm.
interviewing one girl in Toronto, and then I realized there's this whole East Canada territory, or somebody in Texas, and then there's all these girls. So it's
Mhm.
so very interesting, but it's also like, wrestling the same people. Are you going to get out of your bubble? But then, money and living and being an
Yeah.
adult and paying bills, like
Yes.
it's
That's it.
it's all a very scary thing. So I definitely tip my hat to, you guys for, maintaining the dream, because it's not easy. It's definitely not
No,
easy.
it's not. It's very expensive.
It's it's very, yeah, I don't I yeah, I I could tell you stories offline. I'm just like, I don't understand. I don't get it all. But
It's crazy.
you did say one of your goals was to be attached to a major entity. And so you got to recently work with TNA. Um, and just kind of like you were saying when you spoke to that person where they couldn't really give you what it takes or what they're looking for. I feel like everybody who I've spoken to, as far as either getting an opportunity with AEW or TNA or WWE, nobody can. There's no exact same story of, oh yeah, I called, they wanted me, and therefore I was there. So what's
Yep.
your story, and how did that happen?
Yeah. So for the last couple years, I came from a school that was like very heavily involved in WWE at the time. Long story short, I kind of had a falling out with some people, and based off of personal relationships, which are always fun, not on my end. Um, and pretty much, I was trying to find a way to be an extra, to get a tryout, to do all these things on my own, essentially.
Hmm.
And I was probably 8 months in, and I got a WWE tryout. So
Hmm.
8 months into wrestling, I got a WWE tryout. Didn't know who Vicious Vicky was yet. I was a valet. Like I kind of was a leader with Essa Rios, where I like mimicked all my manager's moves. Like I didn't have it yet. Um, and I remember like being coming out for like my tryout match, and like I remember Norman Smiley asking what the gimmick was to somebody next to him, and I like, never forgot that. So ever since, I'm just like, okay, we need to figure this out. Like, so
Right.
that was like step one. And then, after that, it kind of snowballed into extra work at Full Sail at the time when they were there. And then
Hmm.
it snowballed into extra work, with like WWE SmackDown Raw. I did one appearance at AEW. AEW just doesn't respond to me. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, but that's the name of the game. You send these emails like, "Hey, I'm available. I'm available. I'm available," and they get so many emails to the point where it's like
Right.
I can't even imagine what their inbox looks like. I've had a very good relationship with WWE. Um, Gabe Sapolsky has his hands heavily involved into that now with Evolve.
Hmm.
And he's been great with me, so that's a good thing and a good person to have, in your corner. And then when it comes to TNA, Tommy Dreamer, Dave LaGreca, Bully Ray, the Busted Open people have just been monumental in my career and my success and whatnot. I'm very grateful for all of them. Um, and Tommy, when we're around, he makes sure he whether I do asked to do ring crew or whatever, I will show up. I will do what I can. I was actually, going to try to go out to Orlando, but things didn't work out.
Hmm.
Not because of any other reason than I personally could not attend. But I'm willing to and I've been doing it for 7 years. I'm willing to pay my own airfare and fly out there and drive and go A B C D E F G and just be
Hmm.
there. I
Right.
find the the big success that people have is just being there. Hey, I'm here to do whatever you want. I don't care if I'm 7 years in. I am not too good to do ring crew. And
Mhm.
I always make sure I say that. Like, I will do it. I will do whatever you want. Like, I'll clean the bathrooms. I don't care. I just
Right.
want to prove to you that I want to be here. Um, so yeah, I shout out to Tommy Dreamer for, always taking a chance on me and giving me opportunities when he can, for sure. I love TNA. I think for me, if I could pick anywhere that I'd want to start, it would be there. But
Mhm.
I am a person who is, I would do anything, and I mean anything, to go to NXT and train and then, like, then do TV. Like, I would do anything for that training. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I just wanna be a fly on the wall. Like, it's kinda one of those things, like, I don't even tell the secrets. I just am so fascinated by, how you cut a promo in the middle of a ring for 5 minutes, or if you're CM Punk 20 minutes. Like, to be able to do
Right.
that, what I'm saying? To be able to do that is a whole 'nother level, and then to wrestle, and then, yeah,
Yeah,
not miss a beat.
for
I
sure.
just would just love to see what that, like, training, like, looks like. Even Natalia with the dungeon, what does I just wanna sit
Yes.
there. Yeah.
That's
So I
another
definitely
goal.
know
I'd
you
love
too.
to get out there. I really would.
Yeah. But you had some really great matches. One of them was with Tessa Blanchard. So how was that experience like?
Yeah, I was a fill-in, not because I wasn't wanted, because the promoter made that very clear, but they had a limited
Mhm.
card, and they wanted to book me for that show, but the one girl, was already kind of a done deal, and she ended up getting hurt, minor injury, thank God. And I got a call, and he was like, "Hey," they're like, well, actually, it was Missy Sampson called me because she was helping the promoter. She's like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I'm like, I don't know. It depends who's asking, because I'm very picky these days. I'm very
Right.
picky. I'm like, want to preserve my bumps. Like,
Mhm.
she's like, Tessa Blanchard. I'm like, in. And I had a show that day already, so I had a double shot. But Tommy Fierro, shout out ISPW. That's like my home base. I told him, like, hey, can you put me on first today? He was like, go. He's like, you've been waiting for this. She was a bucket list for me since I started. So I think she is bar none one of the best wrestlers on the planet. I
Mhm.
think she is just phenomenal on every accord. Sweetheart. I had a wonderful time. Very easy to call the match with. She was so open minded, but she elevated me, and
Mhm.
and that is the one thing that people, forget what wrestling's about, right? She's one of the best in the planet, and I'm an indie wrestler who's hungry for that experience to be instilled into me, and I had that
Right.
moment, and it was I literally we had PWI Insider, Mike Johnson quoted it as match of the night. It was awesome. It was a great match. It is on YouTube. Go check it out. And we literally tore the house down. And as soon as
Nice.
we were done, I walked the curtain, like, crying my eyes out, like, just cried my eyes out. She's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, "That was awesome." Like, because it was so funny, because my boyfriend, he's like a journalist and whatnot. He even said, he's like, "You're either going to be done with this match and you're going to hate wrestling, or you're going to love it." And I was like, as soon as I came to the curtain, I was like, I love this shit. And it's because I had a great dance partner. It's
Right.
because everything that you want when you become a professional wrestler happened that night for me.
Mhm.
I had a great dance partner. It was a great match. The crowd was good, and I was able to prove to myself and to the world, and the powers that be is what I call them. That is the people who
Mhm.
would sign me one day. To the powers that be, that I can do this. I can hang. If I can hang with
Yeah.
Tessa Blanchard, I think there's a spot for me on TV somewhere. I'm sorry.
So how do you and so again, this is coming from somebody who doesn't wrestle. Is it almost the equivalent of a runner's high where, you start running and
Oh
then
yeah.
all of a sudden, like, the wind's beneath you, like, you're running, a 6-minute mile that you've never run before and there's no pain. Is that the same as far as,
Yes.
knowing that you have a great match?
100%. It's that adrenaline rush for sure. You're, like I said, I came to the curtain and started crying, and I was like, that was one of the best matches I ever had. But it was just it was a bucket list, and it was just, we were running, going, and just it was a quality match, and, like, my adrenaline was so high, and I'm like, I wanted, like you just said, like I wanted to keep going. I
Mhm.
wanted to keep going because I was like, I'm not done yet. Like it was crazy. It was so good.
Who else is on your bucket list?
So I had Tessa. Indy was on my bucket list. I got to wrestle her.
Mhm.
I was very happy about that. That's also on YouTube.
Nice.
Check it out. ACW, January 3rd. Um, Indy Hartwell. Shotzi's on there too.
Okay.
Charlotte Flair. I just love her. And I know I would say it's a long shot. I want to say it's possible, but if I'm not in NXT, I'm not going to say that. So it's a
Mhm.
long shot. But Charlotte Flair, I would love to wrestle her because I think she's another one that is just like that, she's phenomenal. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I think she checks every box. She's just checks every box. I always said Lita because she was my favorite,
Mhm.
but I'm at a point now where like I just kind of want to like hang out with her, you know. And
She
I've met
seems
her a
so
bunch of
cool.
times,
Yeah.
and I've done some cool stuff with her. We did like something last year where she needed like extras, and someone called me for that, and I was like yes. So I got to hang out with her a little bit, but you know, um, and a bucket list thing for me. I'm just gonna put it out there. The Hardy Boys are like the biggest reason why I'm doing this, you know, and I like love them so much that I feel so connected to them. And Matt and Jeff have been great. You know, Matt, they know who I am. I've met them a bunch of times, which is the coolest thing when you're, you know, growing up and you love these people. My biggest bucket list is I want to do something with them before they retire. Like I have to. I
Mhm.
have to. Like whether it's like an intergender match or just a segment, like something. I need to do something with them. And that is like, that has to happen before I retire, before they retire. Like, I've been putting that out there since I started. Like, I have to do something with them.
So you, I think it might have been the interview that you had with your boyfriend earlier this year. You said that you're giving it a certain amount of years and then you're done. However, I just saw a post from you maybe like 3 weeks ago about all the cool things you've done in 2025. So does that change your like deadline moment? Because oftentimes I feel like this as well, being in the entertainment industry, it's just like you give so much to an industry that doesn't really give back to you, doesn't love you
Pretty much.
back the way you love it.
Pretty much.
And you're oftentimes, especially as a woman, you're oftentimes doing that dance where it's like, okay, well, when do I become an adult, or should I keep pursuing this? And what is that? So, given what you said in that interview, and given all the amazing things that you've done, since that interview and throughout the course of this year, what's your feelings about that?
It's so hard because, you know, one day I feel like I would like to have children. That's, you know, I think something I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that I'm a liar, hear me out, but it fluctuates
Mm-hmm.
because when wrestling gives back to me or to us, to any of us, it's so good. And
Mm-hmm.
it's awesome. Like when I had that TNA, you know, bout for a second, like I was on top of the world. I did it. I was on Impact this time. It wasn't an
Mm-hmm.
explosion. Like, you know, I was so happy, so excited. You know, my whole family like just watching, and like I had that moment. And then it's like dead for like months. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know, and you're still, you're in the mud. You're like, I don't know, you're just trying to get back to it, you know, and it's very frustrating. And it's a slow build, you know, and everyone, my family included, my parents, my boyfriend, everybody is like, don't quit yet. Like everyone's saying, I feel it, I feel it, I feel it. And I'm like, I feel it too, but it's never coming, you know? Like
Right.
everyone always tells me, like, don't quit yet. And I'm like, oh, and I wouldn't just quit. Yeah, I love wrestling way too much to just walk away like it didn't exist. I can't do that.
Right.
I know for me, if and when I ever did retire, I would be like, yeah, no, I'm not doing this. I'm coming back. Like and that, but that goes back to what we talked about earlier, like doing a disservice to my younger self. Like
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's so hard to just put the boots down because I feel like I need to make it. It's one of those things. It's like I need to. I have a plan B now, almost set, but I need it. I need it for me, for younger me, to prove to myself that like I can do it. Because I really, my whole life, I was like, oh, I can definitely make it. I can definitely do this, and I'm still sitting here like I can do this. Like what the frig? Like so, it's really hard, But when you throw into like you said, like being an adult and having to really hone in on like, do I want kids? Can I hold off for that? How long can I wait for that? I'm a woman. Like men don't have to deal with that. Like
Mm-hmm.
it sucks. It really does suck. And for me, I said it last year on Busted Open when I kind of had like this breakdown and put that promo out there and Bully said, would you give up, you know, having a family for wrestling? And I said, yeah, I think I would. And I that is so powerful, right? And it's
Right.
so raw and real, but that's where that passion comes in, and even
Right.
now I sit here going like, do I still feel that way? Like sometimes, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
scary because you're pretty much putting all your eggs in one basket and the eggs aren't even like near hatched. Like, it's
I
crazy.
totally get it. As far as Vicious Vicky, like I mean, I love it. Just rolls off the tongue. It's just
It
amazing. Like
does.
just, it's great. How would you, if you were to describe Vicious Vicky to somebody in one sentence, what would it be?
She is a believer who is determined to make it. Done.
There, there it is. I like it.
Done.
One last question for you. I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I mean, I think we have to do a part 2 of this. But
Oh, I'm
Dave,
always down.
Dave, he had a Mount Rushmore that is that's creating quite a bit of a buzz
Oh yeah.
on social media. And it's hard because I was actually talking about this on the TikTok live. It's and I can only imagine, thinking of it for men too, because there's just so much bandwidth for the men, but just even women, who would be on your Mount Rushmore, and or who do you think are the women that have been most impactful for women's wrestling?
Mount Rushmore is hard because you have, an era of, pre 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it would be Charlotte Flair,
Okay.
Trish Stratus,
Mm-hmm.
China, and Lita. That's my Mount Rushmore.
Okay. It's a
When it
solid one.
comes to just an impact, I believe that those women, of course, have to be on that list. I
Mm-hmm.
think Trish Stratus, as much of a Lita fan as I am, I think Trish Stratus broke the mold um, at that time of turning a diva or a sex symbol into a fantastic professional wrestler. I mean, she
Mm-hmm.
look what she was just doing a couple months ago. I mean, she's incredible. And she really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect people like that who kind of come into it and, it's maybe not what they wanted to do or know how to do, and they just figure it out. So that I always love Trisha's story because I think that's just incredible and makes her even more of a
Mm-hmm.
goat than she already is. Um,
Yeah.
and I think right now in the era we're in, I think like the new age of women, it should embody that because she was able to do both. And I think that's impressive. I always find it impressive. Bailey, Bailey's the same way. She was this over baby face and this gnarly heel. I think it's very
Mm-hmm.
important when we watch and we see these women, kind of show us what they can do outside of what it was back then. And I think we're
Mm-hmm.
I think we're super far removed from that. I do.
Yeah.
But I think these women today, they really do impact little girls and around the world to follow their dreams because they're living proof that they're doing it.
Yeah. What if you could wave a magic wand? What do you want your 2026 to look like?
I told myself 2025 was the year that I was going to put pen to paper, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was my goal. And I tried so hard to do that. 2026, instead of making it a goal to put pen to paper, which it will be, it's every day of my life. If I had a wand and I could really make something happen, I would love the opportunity to showcase what I'm capable of, whether it be an NXT, an ID, WWE ID, or a TNA. And I mean, really show what I can do. I
Mhm.
am all for being the bottom of the totem pole. That's how it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I am all for
Mhm.
climbing up and
Start
showing
somewhere.
that I belong. But if
Mhm.
I'm really given an opportunity in that facet of what I just mentioned, that is what I want. I want to be able to truly show, hey, you should sign me, and this is why.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna save this next question for next time I see you because I feel like
Okay.
there's gonna be things. But I'm really excited. Like I said, you know, Dave put you over so much, but again, it's not like I haven't heard your name. But when I started
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
some digging, I was like, oh my God, you're amazing. And
Thank you.
I definitely agree with him as far as, you know, your story alone, it motivating people. So I feel like this is not
Yes.
the last time that we're gonna, you know, we're gonna circle back. I might have to ask WWE permission to interview you, but you know, at least we have. I was like, no, this,
Oh,
this is
that
we've
you
done
know
this
what? I'll
before.
take that. Put that out and put that out there. Put those good karma vibes out there.
Yeah, it's always and I really love seeing that. I love I was gonna say something shady to some folks, but I'm not gonna do it. But I love being able to interview folks and then seeing them in other places, and you know, like looking back at that interview and it's like, oh my gosh, like you know what they said, it happened. And to me,
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like just and it's documented. That's the one thing I really love about doing these. So I'm
Oh,
looking
hell yeah. That's
forward to
awesome.
that. With
For
that
sure.
being said, you know, like you did say, and I think I mentioned it too, wrestling is very expensive on the indie scene. So how can people support you and how can they follow you?
Yes, no, it is so expensive. And I appreciate it. I am on Instagram at Vicious Vickie Venuto, Vicky with an I. I am on Twitter at Vicious Vicky, and I have a pro wrestling tees store, so you can go type in Vicious Vicky. You'll find some merch there. And then if you want to just hit me up, I have tons of 8x10s I really need to get rid of, so that would be awesome.
There it is. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys can follow me everywhere at TK Trinidad. Make sure you follow Women's Wrestling Talk on all social media platforms at www.talkpod.com. Thank you guys so much for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao for now.
Thanks for joining WWT. Don't forget to like us on all social media platforms at WW Talk Pod. Like and subscribe on all video and audio platforms, like yesterday, my G. And check out our website at www.talkpod.com. Thanks for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet.